Make it.
We're going somewhere.
We are going. Where are we going?
Where would you go if you could go anywhere in the world right now, just in a snap?
Right now? Geez, there's so many great places on planet Earth. Some of my favorites, which are Stillwater Lake, where we happen to be right now.
Can you put in an effect that's like like a time machine, and then it's just us again in this space?
I'll try, yeah. I'll see what I can come up with.
I'm just tasking you with a little extra editing.
It would have just happened, so I bet you it was awesome. I bet you I figured it out, and it looks incredible.
It looks so good.
Yeah.
People probably will just keep repeating that part of it, I expect.
They'll be blown away.
Welcome to Make It with Mike and Kristen,
where creative people talk about what they make and what making it means to them.
That was a nice radio voice you had there.
Yeah, I got a decent one going right now.
Have you ever done a radio show? I mean, I know you've been a guest, but have you ever been a host on a radio show?
Well, this is modern day radio.
Yeah, I suppose.
This
got our own show.
We host our radio show, Make It with Mike and Kristen.
Mm-hmm.
Radio's not super relevant anymore.
Well,
it is. It's still I love radio. It's just not as many people are listening to it as they once were, and it's just when you have so many other options, you can get in your car and listen to your favorite album, you can listen to your favorite podcast, just like that. It's hard to just put it up to chance and hope that a station's going to play something you're interested in, so people gravitate towards what they want.
We've had our newer car for 6 months or more now, and I still don't know how to turn the radio on, to switch between the phone and the radio. I can figure it out, but while I'm driving, it's too distracting. It's supposed to be modern and efficient, and there's 17 buttons you have to press just to switch from one audio to the other. So I think I would listen to more radio if I could turn it on.
Yeah, satellite radio is really good, I find.
Yeah.
And community radio I like a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a big fan of the big commercial stations just play the same thing. You can go to any city and just going to be playing the same exact same songs, and that's just my opinion.
Well, it's sure been fun creating our own type of radio show because it means that we get to fulfill dream guest scenarios such as this week with Joel Plaskett.
What an honor to chat to that legend.
Well, we are entering our 3rd year of podcasting, and he has been on our wish list since day one. But it felt like the right time to connect with him and want to say thanks to his manager, Sherry, for making that connection. And Joel not only was a guest on the show, but he invited us into his studio to record, which was like walking into Wonderland, really. You could feel the history in this room.
We talk a lot about that. Mm-hmm. It's a space that, we get into the details, was a furrier. I don't think I've ever heard that word until I heard him say it.
Yeah.
I'll pretend I know what that means. And then when he mentioned animals, okay, they made fur coats here.
Mm-hmm.
But he has an amazing space, Fang Recording. It's just a beautiful space that he does a lot of his own work, and a million great albums and songs have come out of there locally on the East Coast.
We always prep for an interview, of course. We don't want to put our foot in our mouth. And on the drive to Dartmouth, we were talking about different things we wanted to ask him or stories we wanted to tell. And it was one of those interviews that I forgot about all of that because it so quickly didn't matter what these prepared questions might have been. He really led this conversation, and I would say, obviously, we talk about his incredible music career. It's undeniable that we're going to go there. It's Joel Plaskett. But I left feeling like we really got to know him as a person and sort of the magic behind the music. This is one of my favorite interviews ever because he was willing to go to that place that not everybody's able to kind of tap into right away.
There was a lot of philosophy talk and modern media.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just straight like, oh, when did you record this? And tell us about your upbringing. It was, a lot of philosophical stuff in there. And I thought that was super interesting. Like, there's a million interviews with Joel out there where you can find out a lot of those specific details if you're curious about it. But this was really getting into his brain, essentially.
Yeah, we often hear from artists, and I think we would both agree that what you create is representative of you. And getting to truly understand that, especially about someone as accomplished as Joel, felt like a real gift. Oh, here comes George. He just had to make...
You got George.
Hi, sweetheart. Do you want attention?
You want to talk, George? Are you going to say anything?
He was doing a lot of talking out in the hall. He
Yeah.
wants to go out and be in the sunshine. We don't
We'll
blame
get you
you.
out in a couple of minutes, George. Just let us finish this intro for one of the biggest guests we've ever had, Mr. Joel Plaskett. Yeah, someone who I've always looked up to as a musician. Just his songwriting so unique, his stage presence, his banter on stage, everything he does is something that I've in some way modeled myself after. And he's someone who's a songwriter, performer, and also has his own studio. And that's what I do. So he's like the pinnacle of success for exactly what I want to do here on the East Coast. And just such a great guy, so accomplished. Just had his 50th birthday and had the coolest surprise present ever. You want to talk, George?
Tribute album from all of the greats across the country. And yes, it was a surprise for him. And what a cool thing to be able to walk into and see vinyl with all of these tribute songs in your honor that he had no idea that was happening. It was more than a year in the making, I think. And so we kind of navigate through all these stories and places he's been, people he's played with, but really got to the heart of things, I think, in this one, which was fun.
Well, here we go, folks. Ourselves, Mike and Kristen, on the Make It podcast with none other than the legendary Mr. Joel Plaskett.
Ooh.
Make it. Are you tired of paying too much for home and auto insurance only to then have to deal with somebody at a call center? Someone different each time you call who really doesn't understand your needs?
Yes, I'm totally tired of that. But I happen to know the perfect person to solve this issue. Ryan O'Malley with Allstate Insurance has been serving the community here in HRM and across Nova Scotia for years.
I know Ryan too. He provides tailored and customized home and auto insurance plans to help people save money and get the coverage that they need to protect the things that they worked hard for.
He understands the local touch that Nova Scotians love and the service they should expect from an insurance professional. Ryan is also a senior sales agent at Allstate, which means he now has his own dedicated service agent, Carissa, to help better serve his clients. Fancy or what?
And here in Nova Scotia, we know life can throw a few curveballs, like snowstorms in April, a rogue seagull with bad aim, or your drunk cousin backing into your shed again during a backyard lobster boil.
These sound like personal stories, but all very relatable. Thank goodness for friends like Ryan.
Reach out today to get your personalized quote for home and auto insurance. Call 902-210-1293 or email O'Malley, that's ROMALLEY at allstate.ca to speak directly with Ryan. Remember Goosebumps? Nothing like a spooky twist ending to get a kid hooked on reading.
Meanwhile, I was deep in the world of Judy Blume, navigating life, friendship, and all the weird stuff we go through as kids. Books kind of built our creative brains.
And that's why we're so proud to tell you about Halifax Learning, an organization that's been helping Nova Scotian kids build strong literacy skills for over 15 years. They're also this week's sponsor.
Whether it's reading comprehension, fluency, or writing confidence, their evidence-based, research-backed programs get that coveted gold star.
We're talking proven results for learners in grades 1 through 6.
I also want to acknowledge their founder, Sarah Arnold, who is the kindest, most magical, driven human on earth.
Sarah and her team offer a diverse range of expertise spanning education, psychology, and specialized teaching methodologies, empowering learners of all ages and abilities.
Halifax Learning offers both in-person and online clinics, so kids can learn in a way that works best for them, at home in their pajamas or in a classroom with new pals.
And let's not forget, literacy is foundational for creativity. Want to write a song, paint a story, perform a play? You need words. Reading well means making well.
They have 3 local facilities in Halifax Regional Municipality and offer both after-school and summer programs.
Yes, and I know that summer enrollment is happening now.
On your journey to make it, this is where it starts. Reading skills unlock everything from self-expression to creative success.
Halifax Learning believes every child has the potential to thrive. They're giving families the tools to unlock that potential.
If you want your child to grow up loving books, building confidence, and maybe even becoming a future podcast host / musician / gallery owner,
head to halifaxlearning.com. That's HALIFAXLEARNING.com and check it out. Support local learning, support creative futures. Make it.
I might end up with my shoes off eventually, I think. Sitting cross-legged.
Oh, yeah, there you
if
go.
that's okay to get cozy on this couch over here.
Do it. Go nuts.
Okay.
That's the flop couch. Artists sit there and they're like,
Yeah.
every.
Do you have a list of all the artists who ever slept on this couch?
Oh, I don't want to know it either.
Some things are left in the sacred space, not to be talked about. It does, though, I will say, entering this room has a real energy to it. I don't know if that's more just the history and shared experiences here, or if you've maybe smudged the room or had some type of ceremony, but it truly feels like it's alive.
It has a good energy. I agree. I don't think it always did. I mean, it was a furrier storage facility, so it's full of fur coats. You know, when I looked at it, which probably from the animal's perspective wasn't exactly the cheeriest location. It was it was a kind of an industrial space, you know. And then when we set up the studio, it took a while to get it to feel like this. Made a lot of music in the room, which is part of it. I think that spirit I do think that gets held in the walls, you know. A couple of really important congregational kind of moments where we had sort of celebrations of life for friends that we lost here on 2 separate occasions for 2 different folks who I was quite close to. And so a lot of good friends here and a lot of sort of tears shed in the space as a result too. So it's close to my heart. Like I feel like it has a good energy. I kind of feel like, and I sort of feel like friends are here with me, even though it's a big old space that I'm in alone sometimes. I mean, if I'm here by myself, I'm often in the lobby because it's a smaller room. I find this room is like, I don't spend a lot of time in this room on my own just because it's a big room. It's better when there's few people in it.
I've always felt that there's classic venues out there, and when you walk in, you can feel the shared history of 50 years of bands rolling in, the songs they performed, the romances that ensued from those walls. Every single thing that happened, you can kind of feel that when you step into one of those places.
I absolutely think places accrue energy, and you know, and the energy changes depending on what goes on in places. You know, not all old buildings feel great. You know, but I think that's actually sort of important. I think that's one of the reasons I wrestle with an overwhelming amount of newness when there's like, you know, obviously there's a lot of building and tearing down going on and a lot of building up, which is fine. Sometimes it's necessary. You know, some places don't last and some places have to come down, but it takes you so long to get that sort of feeling back. And a lot of these places that are old, that have, you know, old walls and floors, they're sort of, a lot of the new places you feel like they'll never have that. They'll be just redone, you know, before they ever have a patina to the floor that, you know, enough where the dents show up or whatever. I could be wrong about that. So who knows? But I like old lived in spaces, and places that get repurposed. I sort of like that because I feel like there's a continuum with it that's important, at least for me, you know. So
does that matter in terms of creating music? The location that you're doing that in?
Well, I mean, I find it does. I'm pretty affected by my environment. Not as much as some people, but more. Yeah, that's not true. I think I probably am pretty sensitive to my environment. I like to think I'm not. I'm like, I could just set up anywhere. But if I'm in a place and it gets too cluttered, mean, this place gets really cluttered. I can deal with my own clutter sometimes, but if I'm in like another workspace and the sort of the movement through the space or where I want to have stuff isn't in the right spot, I start kind of going, hey, can I put this here? Like I am kind of particular in that way. And I do think, so yeah, it's not everywhere. We built this place. Tom Stager helped me a lot. He was here right out of the gate, and he wired the board and everything. But sort of designed the space on the way I like to work, which is I like the big open room with the console in it. And most of the musicians, we got the lobby where you can put isolation. You can put a drummer out there or a vocalist. But by and large, everyone's in here listening and with the headphones on, and it functions well when everybody's in a shared space as opposed to a bunch of people in a bunch of little isolated rooms. That's okay. And I've worked in those kinds of environments and they can be useful in some ways, but I prefer the sort of moment where everyone could just take off their headphones and hear the music come through the speakers. And often 5 minutes in, or 30 seconds in, they go, okay, let's do it again. And like you almost make a quicker move than if you were waiting for everybody to come from their respective control rooms to, little rooms to sit on the couch and listen and all that. So a lot of the time everybody can just sort of listen where they are in the room. And
when you're producing, is that something you encourage? Or are you trying to get the band together to play live off the floor in that sense?
I mean, I like that. It's always fun when there's a session like that. Yeah. When we did Jimmy Rankin's record here, it was me and JP and Jimmy, and Ron Hines on bass and Jordan playing drums. We did 2 records. So one of the records had Jeff Arsenault on drums too. So those were fun. Those were very much pretty live off the floor. Jimmy's such a good live singer. You can just cut him. In fact, you got to be ready because he's going to deliver right out of the gate. I realize that. It's like you don't, you got to get your levels dialed before you start rolling because he'll nail it on the first take. So yeah, I like that. I love setups like that. It takes a little, but it can be hard getting everybody together at once. I do a lot of tracking here on my own or with a couple of people. It sort of depends on the project and the person. I like all of it. I love a session where, it is exciting when you get everyone on the floor and you start getting that kind of great push and pull, like the friction of musicians playing together. You don't have that friction doesn't exist in overdub land, And so there's nothing like live tracking for that. But, there's something to be said for just following your nose on your own too,
See where it takes you.
Sometimes there's no one recipe. I kind of like it all. So I like the variety. That's sort of why I play solo shows, why I play band shows with the Emergency. The variety keeps me engaged.
Is that intuition, would you say, the same with producing as it is in the music making? Like, are you trusting your instincts in the same way, or are you relying more on tools?
I write sometimes pretty quickly and using intuition and there's a lot of just sort of foolish phonetics, like where I'm just playing with language or humming and hawing or embarrassing myself on my iPhone. I have to I got to make sure I go through and scrub it before I, lose it. But
just have a good password.
You have a good password. Exactly. Yeah.
Not 0000 like all of our devices.
Exactly. Right.
Don't give it away, Chris.
We'll change it later.
We'll bleep it
out. Ping, you've got mail. I like to write sort of in a flow state if I can get into it. And often it requires just having some time and the thing starts kind of tumbling, and I try not to edit right away. I just write a bunch and then I edit, and then I spend a lot of time editing. And that's where I try to kind of go right brain, left brain, as opposed to left brain, right brain. I try not to engage my intellect and my sort of, editing and sort of, categorical mind in the first part of the creative process. That usually inevitably shows up in the studio because you start to kind of chase something specific, or you're trying to articulate to somebody, so you're sort of putting it into language and you're becoming more sort of categorical in the way that or even not mathematical, but you start to sort of go, this would be good if we did this and that. Like, oh, I could hear mandola on that, So you're sort of like, you're starting to sort of shuffle what you think is going to work. But I like the kind of, I like the exploration and the sort of, I guess, right brain for going, what happens if I just pick up the mandola and see how it feels, and then you get surprised. And so it's kind of a bit of a parry between that sort of thing, you know. It's
Do you have any like methods for getting into the flow state, or is it just doing it and hoping you get into it?
I don't know. I mean, the trick for me is to not treat anything too preciously. But when you get on something that feels good and emotionally resonant, I don't sort of like, I don't not take it seriously, or am I saying that the right way? But I kind of find that I try not to edit myself, but I also I'll just sometimes say, like, it's like humor is important, or just letting it be what it is, you know? So kind of just like really, the trick is really to let your mind almost, it's hard to describe. Again, I don't think you can really do it. And who knows where the ideas come from. You just sort of grab them, but you find a phrasing. Sometimes it's a meter, it's a metric thing that I'm often doing. So I'm trying not to think so much about what the words are as opposed to how they feel and how they bounce. Maybe even before melody. Sometimes melody's there first, but often I'm looking for like the meter, which is what I think the catchy thing is, you know? Like, and so when you get that flow, like that's where the flow state idea, where the flow of the language is there, then all of a sudden the words start to fall because of the dance of the language. I think of that great Lord song, Royals, as having that, you know, I've never seen a diamond in the flesh. There's something about the way she probably just, you can hear her singing that a cappella, right? I cut my teeth on a wedding ring.
Yeah.
In the movies, you know, there's just this like kind of flow to that where you sense like, oh yeah, right, and it's catchy, and it almost like it writes itself. But you can hear a lot of intellect in that song. The lyrics are really intelligent, they're really cool, but there's just this sort of easiness to it, or something. Sort of, it feels like it exists. You know, like you're kind of willing it to be, but it's already. It's like writing itself because it's right. And so then when if you have a feeling of that, the flow state sort of takes over, or it can. And then you get hung up now and then or whatever, and you go, now I need to change, and you sort of got to think about it or wait, and then, but that's sort of where it goes. It's quite hard to articulate. That's as close as I can come right now anyway. But.
It's a very thoughtful explanation. And what I love is that we often hear from artists that once you achieve a certain level of success, or whatever you might call it, satisfaction, it actually becomes harder to get into the flow state because you're more analytical about it. You're thinking about the audience, or you're thinking about the end result, or will this be good, or will people think it's good? And you don't really care about that when you're starting out, because that's not the reason you're making it. So it's easier for that to get lost. But I hear you kind of saying like, there's a maturity almost in like learning how to allow it in, and the letting go is something that you've been able to maintain, which isn't always the case. Yeah.
I mean, I think, you know, I mean, it's not that I don't think about my audience, or I don't think about what I want to achieve, or, you know, and occasionally think about like, okay, you know, if you get a song and it's really just feeling like it's hooky and it's right, then usually what I'm doing is going, and often just because I like songs, you know, you want it to fit you sort of, it usually if it's moving in that sort of, say, catchy or poppy or contained classic direction, then often I'll go, okay, well, it's 4 minutes and 30 seconds. That feels too long, you know? And then I'll start to use my producer's ear to say, edit yourself, cut it down. How do you make it like so that it could, if it's going to get on the radio, it's going to more likely do that at 3 or 3:30. So, you know, there's times where do I need all those words? But then other times it's like, you just let it go because the art's leading, and so it's kind of material dependent. Like the songs sort of dictate how loose or how precious you get with the process of editing them, but yeah, in terms of like getting there, you can get hung up on what you think you're supposed to do or what you've done before. I don't mind repeating myself. I steal words from myself all the time. I like that. Bruce Springsteen does it. Chuck Berry did it. I like their music a lot. You know, they were always sort of
homage to yourself.
Yeah, well, you just kind of go, you know, it becomes a continuum. Yeah. It's like, if it's a phrase I used once, why wouldn't I use it again? It's a good joke. I'll tell it tonight, you know?
On Ashtray Rock, you kind of repeat a few lines throughout the album too.
Yeah, and then there's themes that develop across a record, and then there's themes that develop across records.
Yeah.
Where certain phrases show up from the past. Yeah. I mean, and most people wouldn't notice it, but some of the hardcore fans might, you know. And I sometimes I go, where have I used that before? And I don't remember. I don't even know, but there's certain turns of phrases that kind of, on the new record, I've been using the word radio, but when I sing it, I go radio, like a radio playing hard. Like it feels good to sing. And now all of a sudden, every time I say radio, I say radio.
So like a French Acadian thing, maybe.
That's the Dartmouth accent coming out, I think.
Yeah.
When you're thinking off your catalog, do you see it as just, this is one giant album, essentially?
I mean,
like all these little connections. And
there's a lot of connections.
Nuances that are flowing. And
for many years, I wouldn't have thought of it that way. But maybe more recently, the covers record that Sherry orchestrated and everybody covered.
The coolest thing ever.
So cool. I'm floored. Like blew my mind. It still does. It's really, really beautiful. But hearing the songs back in other people's voices and from a bunch of different eras, a lot of them are from the 2000s, some of my earlier material, but to hear them back and then to kind of go, oh yeah, I wrote that, and hearing, kind of remembering where it came from, but then hearing it reinterpreted and then hearing it as a new record of covers by different people in this way. There's sort of like, there's the curation of the whole thing, kind of hanging it together with all these artists. And then there's the writing that's hanging together. These are these songs I wrote, but there's a lot of stylistic differences on that covers record. That was just really neat for me because it was like an experience I really was not expecting and also kind of reframed my tunes for me. But in more recent years, my perspective on time has changed. Mm-hmm. A lot. Now, I'm not saying I live this way or that I can hold on to this feeling all the time. And I get caught in the speed of the world and the anxious feeling of like being propelled to do things and worrying about the future and, the past. But the weird thing is like the only thing that really exists is the moment. And the past is sort of in the past and was moments, but it wasn't the past when it was the moment, right? Mm-hmm. So the past doesn't exist, even though of course it affects us. It's not, things happen to us. Those are important. That's important. It's not like I'm saying, nothing in the past matters. It absolutely does. It's just, it's sort of with me all the time. And the future that hasn't, this is really hard to explain. I'm going to get sounding kind of weird and out there, I guess, but I feel like I can kind of reach both ways and that I'm 50 now, and sometimes I still feel like I'm 20, or I can will that feeling into my mind, but I know I've changed a lot since then. I'm thinking about things I wouldn't have even thought of then. But there's a kind of continuum there that feels like there's something. There's chronological time. I think it was the Greeks had multiple words for different kinds of time. Mm-hmm. So there's chronos time, which is chronological, which is sort of linear, which is basically the way we in the Western world think of time, which is like we divide it up into even pieces and say an hour's this. Mm-hmm. But then there's what they call kairos time. Kairos is like is time. It's sort of like in time instilled with meaning. So an hour that could feel like it went by in a minute, or it was a day because it was so rich, so time is totally relative to what you're experiencing and what you're doing. And so if you can wrangle staying in the present and in that flow state, which I'm only there rarely, but sometimes when you get there and it's really good, everything kind of drops away. Everybody sort of, hopefully most people have the feeling in some capacity in their life, right?
Yeah.
I do feel like less and less, I worry that less and less people are having that because of technology, because the technology takes you out of that flow state. I mean, there may be ways in which you can use the technology to get into it. I don't know, like maybe a coder gets in a flow state, I don't know. So, but
meditation apps,
but he doesn't get in a flow state if his phone pings and says, "Hey, are you coming over for dinner?" You know what I mean? Or whatever, like, the things that take you out of it are the kind of the distractions that the technology where everything's in it all the time. So, but the Kairos time idea, I think, is a kind of a cool one. And I sort of think about that. Like, how do I live in more Kairos time, right? In time and still with meaning. So we're having a conversation here right now. Like, how do we make this the best conversation we've ever had in the moment? You know what I mean? Or whatever, right? It's just like you kind of live in it. You try to really be present. I'm not great at that. Like, I'm daydreaming when I'm talking to people. So I don't love that about myself. I try to listen, but my head goes into other places and I start thinking about things I either got to do or the things I've been working on. If I've been working on music all day and I go home, I am like not really great at just flicking that off and being present. Like I find it very difficult, and it can be hard on family or friends where I'm just like, sometimes like, or we go to a family dinner, and it's like I've had a work day and I get there and I'm like, I just want to take a nap on the couch. I want to see everybody, but I'm like kind of done, because I almost don't have any room to hold like a in the present conversation. And so I'm working on that, because you really want to have that. It's great when you can have that flow state with other people. Like it's not just, for me, a lot of the time it's a solo-ish endeavor or something that happens when the band's on stage while we're playing. Great. But it's important to be able to try to find it, I think, like in the moments where you're actually in conversation, where you're like, you just totally connecting or what have you. So that's sort of always there. But that's how I'm thinking. That was a long answer to whatever the question was.
Oh, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And I wonder, turning 50 recently, which is but another example of measuring time.
Sure, exactly.
Is it, would you say in recent or later years that you're sort of having some of these reflections?
I think, the last number of years, there's been a number of people that I've known that we've lost as in our community as friends or what have you. So there's, when you start getting to the age where your folks are getting older and, you might have friends that pass away. And I mean, that can happen at any age. A lot of young people go through really hard things. I find but there's just like a temperamental shift for me a little bit in the last few years, where I feel like I'm trying not to sweat the small stuff. I still get down in the weeds, but I'm trying harder to be like, doesn't matter that much. The stuff that does matter, losing someone matters, but I mean, the little stuff, the stuff that people argue about or get in all the stuff that goes on online, not all of it, but so much of the kinds of conversations that people have, or that just becomes like, there's so much acrimony, in different places. And it's not to say some of it's not merited or it's important things that are being wrestled with. Absolutely. But just the temperament in which we engage things is part of it. And I'm just trying to be like, right, how do you kind of hold the center in yourself, so that in the, one of the metaphors that I like, I think I'd heard it is that me?
It's an alarm on my phone. Keep going. Keep talking. I think it might have stopped recording too because of that.
Oh, there you go.
That's my alarm to
tell you what, we've run on too long.
No, it's my we don't usually record at this hour, so yeah, I forgot to turn it off. That's my it's time to shut off social media.
Oh, do you? Oh, that's good. Well, there you go.
This is
shutdown mode in general.
Be present. That's what that alarm is for.
Yeah, it was listening to the conversation, saying time.
Wanted to have a say in
if you're
all
listening
of
to this podcast, stop it right now and go spend time with your family. There's nothing more.
Enjoy life, folks.
The metaphor of like a string or a rope, a string under tension, and so if it's too tight, it breaks, and you have no music. If it's too slack, there's no music, right? So you're trying to hold relationship and the world in some form of the right amount of tension. So, when to pull and when to loosen up, is part of the trick. And so how you maintain a reasonable tension to find music or harmony and without breaking strings. Of course, they're going to break sometimes, but that for me is part of the trick, is just to kind of go, right, okay. In a time where it seems like there's a lot of tension, I'm kind of, how loose can I get?
Yeah.
How hard do I want to pull on anything? That kind of thing. So, I mean, I'd mentioned the hemispheres there of the brain. I think there's a writer named Ian McGilchrist who studied kind of neuroscience stuff about the brain, and I think he was the one to use that metaphor of that kind of referencing that. I'm not sure if he got it from somewhere else, but I like that string metaphor. I think that there's something to that.
Feels like a good musician's metaphor to have.
Yeah, a good musician's metaphor, and it just and the idea that everything's in relationship, right? And so how does one sort of, how to be in relationship to the world, to the natural world, to your friends, to your family, whatever, community, all those things. It's a matter of knowing what kind of energy you have for the moment, but also if something's happening, how you maneuver your, yourself so that you don't add more, you don't create grief for yourself or for others. Sometimes you have to hold your ground, but it's sort of no one would even just turn in so that if you're holding your ground, you're facing in the right direction. So, that kind of thing, a lot of the time it's about diverting energies. If something's coming right at you, that there's a sort of sideways move that's sort of often necessary.
You mentioned earlier, Joel, about ideas. You kind of said it in passing, where do they even come from? What are your thoughts on that? Are ideas or song ideas, any ideas just floating around and we're putting up our antennas to try to latch onto those frequencies? Are they uniquely ours? If we let them go, someone else going to get them. I don't know if you ever read Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, but she really gets into that concept of how an idea is out there, and if it comes to you have to grasp that. You have to lean into it, and if you don't, it can be gone, and someone else can essentially take it, air quotes.
Yeah.
But that's something I'm always trying to figure out, because I could be sitting there and just something hits me. I pick up a guitar, and 10 minutes later, there's a song that exists that if I didn't reach for that, it would never come again. Exactly. It feels like.
I mean, I agree, and I think that absolutely there's things in the air that people are tuning into, and I don't think anybody else's interpretation of something or even being inspired by that same whatever otherness, immaterial thought form that, you kind of, you lick your finger and stick it in the air and see which way the wind's blowing and go, I got a song, you caught a fish or whatever. So yeah, I mean, somebody else might come along and feel the same thing because, the wind's blowing and everybody can feel that it's going in that direction. I mean, there's one of my sort of recent interests has been the work of Marshall McLuhan, a media theorist who coined the term "the medium is the message." And I've been taking a class online from his grandson Andrew. I've done two where we're reading this kind of 1964 book, Understanding Media, that McLuhan did. I'll just say Marshall McLuhan has a kind of, he's quoting Ezra Pound, I think, but basically getting at this, the language is from the 60s or even earlier, but it's sort of like the artist is the antenna of the race. So the language just may be dated, to some degree, but the idea that the artists, and McLuhan developed this early form of a prompt deck, the distant early warning card deck. It's a deck of cards with all these little like cues and prompts on them, and it's sort of like Brian Eno. Brian Eno would have been inspired by McLuhan's.
Yeah, okay.
Right? But the idea that there's a distant early warning line in the north, right? To detect nuclear threat or something, right? The distant early warning
Russians.
line, right? But the do line is something that the artist is picking up what's coming, right? And this is what he's sort of getting at, is that the artist, if the artist is sensitive enough, right, to the environment, changes in the environment that are coming from technology, the artist feels that pressure of those things in a way. Maybe everyone's feeling it, but a sensitive artist, capital A artist, who knows? Could be, could be a plumber, right? You know what I mean? Like, I just mean like a sensitive person who can then sort of register something and then make something from that energy or that feeling, can then foreshadow what's coming, right? So the arts is often ahead, or it's sort of showing you what the response to the incoming might be. It's sort of saying, hey, this is coming over the dew line, and the art kind of telegraphs that to the rest of the world, and then it becomes part of the zeitgeist. I put some stock in that. I think it's a really interesting. And that's not to sort of elevate. Well, no, let's elevate art. Like I think we might as well elevate. Yeah. It's getting like, it's not to sort of say that it's some rarefied, thing that's above and beyond all things. But there is something about great musical moments, great art, great writing, where you feel like this is telling me something important, and that feeling, and all of a sudden you can feel that energy, and almost in society, like it's suddenly clicked. Some things are just ahead of the curve, and I think art can really do that. Poetry gets at it, because it's much more metaphoric and it leaves space for you. It's not telling you exactly. It's not a highly specific, declarative, explicit. That's the word I'm looking for. This is what's going to go on. It's this feeling that it's projecting implicitly, and you sense that, and then that becomes like, and then people respond to that, and that implicit feeling gives everybody at his best, for me, like, the feeling that you can be yourself within that energy, but you respond to it for better or for worse. It's like something comes at you and you interpret it, but it becomes, it's almost personalized enough that it's not just like a universal, like, this is what's going to happen. Sometimes you get something that feels that way, but it's more like something nuanced that resonates for people in different ways, that once that's put together, forms something bigger and is maybe part of like the collective unconscious, if you buy into that, sort of Carl Jung's idea of the collective unconscious and all that. So, I find all that very interesting, and I do think songs come from other places, and I felt taps on the shoulder, if from friends who are gone, and things that I just wasn't expecting to be thinking about, and getting kind of surprised at like whatever words I came up with that I'll put my name on it and file a SOCAN form to say, yeah, I wrote that song. So, I will sort of say, I will also kind of go, I don't know, man, where, like, I don't know where it came from, mine. Exactly.
But with that in mind, Joel, just keep talking here. Does that force an artist to act quickly, in speaking of the artist being ahead of the curve?
I don't know. I guess it depends on whether you feel like compelled as an artist to telegraph it quickly to other people. Like, I don't know. Right now I'm working on stuff that I don't know when it's going to come out. I feel like I'm feeling a push to work on it and to try to finish it, but I'm also sort of not trying to put a date on it, because I'm trying to make sure that it's right and it's ready. And I feel like I know that I can even tell in my mind there's this like time I have to give it that I would not often. I get pretty compelled and pretty single-minded, and pretty selfish at times when it comes to making things when I want to do it, and so when I start working with my head down, it's kind of like I'm sort of like, it can be exhausting for myself and for other people around me, because I'm kind of like, I want to get this done, and if I'm working, I'm impatient. Like, I know that about myself, and I'm trying to get on the other side of that a little bit. And I am trying to start to play the long game a little bit with my own, and so I think I'm making some strides in that regard, but I do have a sort of impatience. I have a real impatience with technology. So if there's something slowing down a creative process,
like
involving a computer, like an alarm going off, I have a really hard time with the world of screens and digital technology in particular. Like, I'll sit around and wait for a tape machine to get fixed. Like, that's frustrating, but I would rather lose a day to a tape machine than 2 hours to a computer. Because I know, and it's just less satisfying to have figured it. It's some thing hidden behind like I don't know, like an iLock or something for Pro Tools or whatever. It's some weird thing not speaking to another thing. Whereas if you have a issue with a guitar, it's like, it's playing out of tune. Like, I need to reset the neck. Like, you kind of know what it is. But digital technology is just like, it's miniature, and it's sort of, and everything's in it all the time. So, it's most of the time it's functioning. It's just more like it's omnipresent, and we're all kind of dragged into it. It's hugely empowering on one level, but there's like a massive shadow.
Well, you have to become a whole other thing. You have to be a computer guy. Like, I want to be a music guy, but I got to be a computer guy too.
This is it. And I mean, I think one of the things that cell phones and computers are really good at creating for us, and I think we're now swimming in it, and we didn't realize that there's this idea that it was sort of like liberation. Like, I can do everything. I can edit my record from the phone. I can write my emails. I can do everything. You can do everything. It's amazing. You can travel with this little device. You pay your parking in it. Everything's there. Yeah. But what a ton of that stuff is shadow work. It's like, and I sort of learned that term from Ivan Illich, who was sort of like a critic of modernity. He was like a historian, a kind of Catholic historian who had these really interesting polemic books about, how institutions turn into their opposite, how institutions eventually undo themselves and stuff. He was a very interesting thinker. I've been learning a bit about him and reading him. But he has this short essay called Shadow Work. I mean, a lot of women have done a lot of shadow work over the, child, care, these kinds of things that often aren't acknowledged in society, these kinds of things. But also things like I get out of the car and my son goes like, why are you looking at your phone? I'm like, I'm paying the parking, you know? It's like, we used to be just plug a quarter in a meter. And if I didn't have a quarter, I'd be like, I have to go to a convenience store and buy a pop to get some change and talk to the guy behind the counter. Yeah. But now I have to spend the time doing something that takes me out of the world, but also like even just the way we have to fill out forms or you do check out our groceries at the store, self-checkout. Like, it's like, yeah, it's convenient. It's like, yeah, but it's also just this like work that, you know, driving to your job is like shadow work, right? It's like the thing you're not being paid for. Do you know what I mean? But if you have a job that requires you to be there, and so you just sort of go like, most people just accept it, but there's more and more of it now, and there's so much more of it with digital technology that's kind of hidden in the fact that we have to figure out how to update our phone. Like that's why, you know? Because you better, or else your world is going to fall apart, you know? It's like something that you just don't want, that you know, everyone just sort of takes it as a given, but we have like more free time and less free time than we ever had. I don't know. I think it's sucking people out of creative flow states and all that sort of stuff. I mean, I don't really want to get into like a rant about tech. Exactly. I spent a lot of time thinking about it though. And sort of, you know, I mean, it ties into the sort of the McLuhan work and all that. I do find it because I am concerned about where we're headed. And I mean, I got the challenge on my phone and like everybody else does. It's just unbelievably omnipresent. You know, it's such a weird world we're living in that way. So I find like when I'm in a studio like this with the analog gear and the hands on the faders and, you know, there's a computer in the background that gets used and is there. But I tend to have, you know, Thomas or Alex who engineer here, they know how to use a computer. Like I can barely find a file. You know, I keep the recording. I try to keep the tech out of my musical world as much as possible. I'm in it with most other things. But when it comes to making music, I would prefer to sort of stay pretty analog in that regard because it seems a little more relational.
Hey, Kristen, do you know what's awesome?
Theme parks, cotton candy.
Well, yeah, but I was going to say saving money.
Saving money is awesome.
Well, the sponsor of this week's podcast episode, Ryan O'Malley with Allstate Insurance, can help you save money with home and auto insurance.
That sounds fantastic, but I don't like dealing with call centers and talking to like 30 different people.
That's the amazing thing with Ryan. You don't have to deal with a call center. You get to speak with someone local living in Cole Harbour who knows our area, our weather, our vehicles, and our housing needs.
Ooh, I love the sound of this. And with the money we will save through bundling our insurance with Ryan, you can take me to a theme park and buy me cotton candy.
We can buy anything you want with all the money we'll save.
I'm sold. Sign me up. How can I get in touch with Allstate Insurance?
Well, you can call Ryan O'Malley at 902-210-1293 or email romalley@allstate.ca. And he's been a fantastic supporter of local arts in our podcast, so we really give the thumbs up to Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan, for helping Nova Scotians save money while protecting the things that matter to us. How do you think about these things when considering your identity? So from this conversation we've had about maybe catching the ideas of others, if we want to buy into that concept, to things like modern technology that we may or may want to use, but we're required to. I ask you this because my way of looking at art is that it's an expression of me and my lived experiences and those moments from the past that are not in this moment, but are still, you know, they collectively are me. They are my identity. And I wonder, like, how do you think about the translation of your identity and these surrounding influences, for better or for worse, and how they might be impacting the output of your creative work?
It's an interesting question. I mean, I don't know. That's sort of the answer to that would be sort of in flux a little bit, you know, and as sort of corny as it might be to sort of even like to quote myself. Sometimes I find I have an easier time getting at what I'm feeling about something, like in a feeling answer to that. But when I write songs where I can play with language. So I have this song called Representin' I'm working on. maybe on the next record. And it goes, I only represent myself. And even that might be a stretch. Some days I don't know who I am. Sometimes I don't know east from west. And if you got me figured out and everything is ringing hollow, you might be right, but it's your shout. Let's short tonight, this time tomorrow. And then, you know, and I like that. I mean, and so it kind of gets at this idea that it's like, yeah, you know, like I can only be who I am, you know. I mean, I could explain what I meant by it, you know, but it's probably fairly self-explanatory. There's nothing worse than somebody saying, this is what I meant by it. But you know, the sense of identity is like, it's in relation. I'm not, and without you in the world or us here now, if there's no me unless there's a you, right? Like everything, there's no sense of self unless it's in relation to something, right? And so I suppose if you were like the last person on earth, you'd be in relation to the other aspects of the natural world or something, but you might not think about human beings and identity in the same way, right? You know, there would be, and so I feel like my identity is relational to some degree, and maybe that makes everyone's a wee bit of a chameleon, right? You know, because you're kind of you've got your memories, but you're curating how they impact you and what they mean in relation to the moment that you're in with whoever you are.
Yeah.
And so that's why I feel like identity is quite plural. And I feel like trying to, and that's not to say there aren't some things that are quite fundamental to it, right? You know, and that hold, you know, but even there, I hold all that somewhat loosely, knowing that it's important, but that it is sort of in flux to some degree. And it's kind of like, it's like holding on, I hold on to my ego. I love that song, the Brian Wilson, you know, Hang On to Your Ego. Frank Black covered it. You know, hang on to your ego. And, you know, I kind of, you know, I find I have to get up on stage. There's always a little bit of like the sense of who I am and what I'm trying to translate. It's like, there's this sense of self, right? That has ego involved in all this, and you go and you play, and you know, it's like I tell stories, and I evoke stuff from the past, and I like to make, you know, it's satisfying to like tell a story and have people respond to it. You know, you feel like you make a connection, but you know, on some level, you're using those things, right? You're using those things to bring something out of someone else and bring them closer to you, right? It's manipulative. It doesn't mean it's malevolent, right?
Sure.
It doesn't mean it's bad, but it is manipulative, right? I mean, you know, so I mean, on some level, like if you're, and it's not like you're always doing it consciously, right? But this is all just to say that like those aspects of like personality, identity, all those things, they're really important. They're fun. They should be playful, but they're kind of they do sort of flux, and they come with baggage. And so I'm kind of like, right, I'm going to put my bags down a little bit, try to get outside myself for a minute, and then pick them back up, and you know, go out and I'm talking around to your question a little bit here, but yeah. Anyway, yada yada yada.
Do you feel when you're actually on stage performing that that's a different version of yourself than your everyday life?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, I like to be myself. I like to sort of not try to pretend that I'm like, you know, entirely different, but you kind of exaggerate certain tendencies or emotions. I mean, even with songwriting, I'll write something, and it might start in a personal place or thinking about something, and then often I'll exaggerate an emotion just because it makes for a better song, right? I don't feel that strongly about it, but it feels better if I feel that. You know, you kind of embody a more intense version of what it is, because you know, that's often what art is. You have to push it across to people, which sometimes means intensifying it even beyond what, you know, and so, and sometimes, you know, the songs do just come with intense emotions, but sometimes it's like, you know, there's a conscious, you cartoonize things a little bit, right? Like this is too high definition. I gotta make this a simpler drawing, you know, to reach the back of the room, right?
I like that.
It's, I mean, it's the same with like even like big gestures, like a drum fill, you know, that goes to the back of the room. If it's like really, really busy and there's so much in it, it kind of gets lost as it reverberates into an arena or something. But that's why arena drummers go, glug, glug, you know, like bang, you know, like big hits that just bounce off the back wall and come to them, you know? I mean, for everything I say, there's versions that break the rule, but you know, there's that way in which one tries to communicate, which is a sort of, you take a part of yourself and you push it further. And that means if you do that, other aspects of what you do go into retreat, or they lie in shadow. Not so much retreat, but they become shadowed. And so sometimes I'm mindful of the fact that people think they know you through music, or you think you know somebody through what they make. But I don't hide who I am in my music, but it's by no means, you know, relays I'm not trying to telegraph something entirely autobiographical either. It's a lot of imagination in it. And I mean, more and more, I've been sort of more interested in philosophy, more interested in metaphysics the last number of years, and the kind of immaterial things that are communicated that we can just think of as like cultural add-ons. But I think that there's a lot of things that are like kind of realities of a different nature that are immaterial. And so what we do with that, you know, so I'm interested in trying to bring that into the music in its own way. So I'm writing around things that I'm feeling. I don't know. I haven't really made sense of it. It's like, it becomes just a process of, I love writing songs. I love writing words. You know, I like language a lot. I like how I like exploring the limits of it. And more I'm finding I'm coming up against the edges, and that's getting frustrating sometimes, but that's what I like about McLuhan. It's like he's interested in the edges of language, and he's like highly articulate, but he's doing something with it that's showing you, I don't know, it becomes almost like now I'm really on a rant here, aren't I? But like,
that's what we want.
It's like one of the things, to take it back to the like Black Mirror, to the cell phone, you know, one of the things that really that kind of got me off socials for the most part. You know, I still tune in and check out what my friends are doing. But one of the things I realized is when I was looking at something and I was in a good mood and I saw like angry posts, you know, I would go, oh my gosh, everyone's just so upset all the time on here. And then if I was in a bad mood and I saw someone like writing about something they were really happy about, I'd be like, oh my God, it's all, you know, like my dinner, you know, why is everyone posting pictures of their dinner? And I just realized it was just a reflection of my own internal world. It had nothing to do with that. You know, it was all like, if you end up, there's this kind of edge, right? You go like, oh, this says more about me. And so when you're trying to write something, you're trying to find words that express something, and you hit the edge of them. But even in hitting the edge, you're saying something about yourself, like you're in it. You know what I mean? And so you come up against a limit. You try to find it. I work a lot to try to find the right words, but at a certain point I go, it doesn't quite get there, but it does something, and it does reveal something. Right. And so, you know, they're like the black mirror of a phone, when it's off, you're being reflected. You just can't see yourself that well, you know? And so all of those sort of like dances with whatever technology, because language is a technology, right? That they're really useful, but they have this sort of, they have these like parameters. I find that interesting where I'm at right now. I don't know. I've been thinking about a lot of that.
I want to ask you about what I call the Sidney Crosby effect.
Okay.
We were talking about this on the car ride here, and I've sort of been reflecting on how like my life has kind of been broken up into chunks where I spent a period of my career working as a massage therapist in like the wellness world and learning about that. Yep. And then I worked in politics for 10 years. And now I've been a full-time artist for the last 3 or 4 years. And part of that is kind of like in pursuit of passion or purpose, or feeling like this is my raison d'etre.
Sure.
I feel like you, and I don't want to assume this, but I feel like you're an example of somebody who appears at least to have been born into this sense of knowing of this is why I'm here and this is what I'm meant to do. And I see that in Mike as well, who has spent, at least as far as his career goes, dedicating his life to this singular thing.
Sure.
I think there's a lot of people out there that kind of struggle in figuring that out, and then the absence of figuring that out feel, quote, lost in their life, or like, what is my purpose?
Sure.
And I think it could be valuable to hear from someone, or both of you really, about how that feels in your body, how you might know that this is in fact purposeful, or just to speak to the person that maybe is in pursuit of that and feels a little bit lost.
Right. Any thoughts on them?
I feel like I've never had a desire, even a remote, tiny inkling off me to do anything else.
Right.
Like it's just always been, no matter how, like at the very start when things were challenging, you're trying to get gigs and write songs and figure it out. Like as poor as I ever was, it wasn't even a possibility of doing something else. And as I look back on it, I'm like, that's kind of crazy. Like it's some people would have thought that this guy's nuts or whatever, but it just always felt like I had to do this. Like every step will take me a little bit further. If I get past this, if I do this, if I get this gig, will take me to the next one. If I get this whatever sync license, this is gonna pay my rent. But it just felt like is what I was supposed to do. Ever since I started writing songs, it always kind of felt like that to me, that it was my purpose. And that doesn't help anyone, I don't think, out there, because I think if you feel that, you obviously know. But for people who aren't sure, I don't know if that's going to be a helpful answer. But it just always, there was never anything else that took me in any other direction, I guess.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I mean, I was in the right place at the right time in the 90s, you know, when the Sloan took off and Thrushhermit rode on their coattails, you know. I mean, there was a great scene around. It wasn't just Sloan. It was all sorts of bands. We were part of it, but we were very lucky because we were younger than everyone. We got kind of, you know, swept up, and we had a publishing deal by the time we were 17 with BMG in New York, you know.
That's crazy.
And then and then a deal with Elektra Records at the age of 21, you know, out of New York as well. And we toured all over the States, and we'd had a full run of it, you know, through the 90s, really. And so when I got going under my own name in 99, 2000, when the Emergency got going, I mean, I'd already sort of had a couple of records with Thrushhermit, and we had toured the States considerably, you know, and done a lot of shows. And I never really had a backup plan. That's why even when the Hermit broke up, you know, some of the other guys went on to Cliff left, went on to a job. Ian's been in music doing sound, and somebody sort of, he's both Rob's a writer. Rob's got a book coming out soon, his third or fourth novel.
Didn't you release your first solo record the same time as the last Thrushhermit?
Yes, yeah, they came out pretty much very close to each other. My solo record was done before Clayton Park was even recorded. You know, and you know that might have been part of. I don't think that contributed to the demise of the band necessarily, but the fact that I was starting to like park some interest in solo material and had a record that was solo, you know, was probably indicative that like we were all sort of like getting into different things. And so when we split, it was the right time. I was 25 and, you know, started the new millennium with a new band with the Emergency and working under my own name, and I didn't really look back. So, you know, the lack of backup plan was part of it. You know, I sometimes get asked like, you know, what do you recommend, you know, to young artists, or how would you get, I mean, the music business is hard, I think, for young people now, because the whole game is selling it in an online space. Like most of it is not. And, you know, there's still shows and those kinds of things, but, you know, we used to poster the city like nobody's business. Now you would have to spend half the game on Facebook ads or whatever you got to do, or talking heads saying, hey, everybody come to my show. And, you know, I'll do that now and then. Most people I know do that now and then as part of the thing, but it's sort of like not really how we want to spend our time. But, you know, all that aside, I think the thing is the trick for me, and I would never want to, and this is also maybe coming from like, you know, a place of privilege where I had opportunities that happened there, and I had parents who were hugely supportive, not trying to push me into something else at a young age. So, you know, take that all into account as I say it, but I just always want to lead from a place of art, you know, and with the hope that the commerce piece of it follows. The Hermit operated on that. We were sometimes like hugely almost arrogant in the belief that we could turn something down and something better would come along. You know, like we just had this confidence that we were much more, and more like a desire to be, we also we cared about credibility. So we didn't want to sign do something lame, like, so there was partly like the ego of being, the feeling of being part of a scene and trying to sort of remain indie, but then into a major label framework. When we were on a major, we only lasted one record and we got dropped because we probably weren't playing ball well enough. Right. And so, we could we had been more successful, but then if we'd been more successful, would that band have dragged on beyond its expiration date or something? And we'd have a different, so then under my own, I've always just been like, what do I want to write about? What feels good? And a lot of the time I followed an intuition, but you do have to sort of like, it doesn't mean you don't listen to other people. You can't, and actually I find more and more, sometimes like in more recent years, I ask people, I sometimes, I go through phases where I sort of lose not my faith, but I kind of go, I want to check my intuition.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of this? Is this good? But by and large, I'm, I guess it's self-confidence, but it's also just kind of like, I don't know, what is this other than, if I can't live with this, why would I want to sell it? Or why would I want to figure out how to, and to be honest, like my least favorite part, or the thing I like least about playing music in a public fashion is becoming a public person, is being like, and I'm not, I'm recognized here and there locally, and I've got lots of big community, I get to know lots of people. It's really great. I mean, I love walking around downtown Dartmouth, see lots of people I know, and I get nice folks coming up who sometimes they're visiting from out of town. They come in the shop and they're big fans. It's great. I don't mind being recognized and acknowledged for what I do. Like, I don't want to, I'm not interested in being famous is basically what I'm saying. In fact, if anything, I find like big fame would be a prison, and I feel for people who are in that. And like when their talent when their talent brings them like massive fame, maybe even massive wealth, but then what do they have to put in front of them? Or between them and all the people who want access to them and everything, you end up with famous people needing bodyguards or whatever and all that. To me, I'm like, God, so if anything, like the desire has been like, make weird enough art that it just like change it up so that, but that's, that's not necessarily practical advice to somebody who needs to make a living or who's just trying to get 100 people at their show or 20 people at their show, follow, just do what you want. It's like, no, pay attention. Like I did pay attention a lot. Right. Yeah. And I've always aspired to reach the back of the room, and I think about what I do and how to present it, but I've always just tried to do it in a way that I could still be myself in that, I guess is what I aspire to. Not to say, so yeah, that's the trick. It's just being able to like live with it, and live in it, I guess, live in it. But not have it define who you are too. Like one of the things I've been much more mindful of in the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years is just be like, yeah, that's music. That's like, it's both my job. It's a big love of my life. It's sort of my hobby because I don't really have hobbies. I could use some, frankly. But it's all these things, but it is not the defining. I mean, I'm certainly known as a musician, and I'm, I'll accept that it's a big part of what I am to other people. But, I don't really want to be hemmed in by that. Again, it's like that identity question that you had, right? It's like my life as a musician is something I'm trying to hold loosely and with as much joy, because if I hold it tight and I break it or whatever, or it's just no longer fun, So I'm trying to be much more relaxed. It's like, I don't feel very good today. I don't really want to do this. I got to. Okay. Well, then I better have like a good time doing it. You just sort of like try to like lean into whatever it is and be as okay with it, realizing that like I'm living the life of Riley, I can't believe I get to do what I do. I mean, look where I'm sitting, like in a recording studio full of all this gear with like working with great people and all in this community. And like, so I'm I feel super fortunate and blessed, in terms of just like having sort of, but again, like the world could change tomorrow, and there's all sorts of things that kind of come along. And so it really just becomes but if you can chase, like you were talking about how you've changed jobs and if you're chasing the joy, right? Like, I guess I just haven't, I like, there are different joys that, like it's not all music, right? I've like reading and the kind of, some of these sort of more intellectual pursuits that I'm interested in. I find a lot of joy in that.
Yeah.
A lot of joy in my family and in kind of like watching my son grow up and trying to kind of understand who he is and what he's doing and all that. And even joy in the friction and trying to figure out what's wrong in other capacities, whether it's in the world or something. Like I do feel like, I don't know, it's just like a little observation. I don't have a huge political stake in any party, right? Like I have my political leanings and all that. But when I watch Carney's speech, I hope he does a good job, I have no idea, but there was just a moment where he was giving his acceptance speech and somebody's phone rang on stage and he said, "Your phone's ringing." So again, the guy's like trying to get, and he's just giving his acceptance speech. And then like people are kind of looking at him and he's like hustling and Carney goes, "Yeah, so it might be someone important. It's okay." Like the way he just, I mean, he was obviously really relaxed, and he was probably in a pretty good mood. He just won,
Right.
But there was something about just seeing that little like sense of humor and levity that made me go like, okay, good. Like, who cares that a guy's phone's ringing on stage at your big acceptance speech? I thought it showed a degree of like, just go with the flow and like try to have some, so I'm hoping that maybe that's like that maybe he'll carry some of that into his dealings with Donald Trump or whoever, because the world could use more. It doesn't mean you don't like hold steadfast and get angry when you need to get angry, but there's something about trying to approach things with a lot. I mean, one of my good friends, Lynn Jones, she's an amazing local activist from Truro in the Black community. I've known Lynn since, 2018 or so. And I just saw her, we just had dinner the other night. And I mean, she's active and an activist and just, working hard for her community and the whole community, but she's so joyful in how she moves through the world. It is so infectious, And so while she's hugely principled and she's like fighting, she is just like, it's such a reminder that there's like ways in which like one's demeanor can move through the world and you can be like really principled and hold your ground, but also like I've learned a lot from just kind of being in her presence because she's just got such a way that she moves through the world. It's like, makes me laugh. She's laughing all the time. She makes me laugh, so.
It's also a great example of how, like, to this question of how your purpose doesn't necessarily have to be rooted in your work.
In your work, yeah. And exactly. And also just viewing it as work is part of what we, is maybe part of what, like the whole modern sense of self, right? The whole modern sense of the individual and of like work as this thing as opposed to just being like life.
Yeah.
Like people, I wonder back in older pre-Western and like in tribal societies before the written word and all that, was it like, well, I got to go to work today? Like, do you know what I mean? Or is it like, I'm going to go out and do the thing I do every day, like hunt, catch fish, whatever it is, There's a great New Yorker cartoon that, my friend Leroy sent me the other day. I think it was from the New Yorker because I tried to look it up to see where it came from. He must have, but it's like it's a picture of like a caveman or whatever holding a guitar and then his wife beside him as he's leaving with a guitar. It's like, why can't you just be a hunter gatherer like everybody else? That cracked me up.
Has your
so
wife ever
funny.
said
I'm still
that to
laughing
you?
about it. He's sending it to everybody. It's so funny. Why can't you just be a hunter gatherer like everybody else? But again, it's like that. This is work, right? Like this is the work you do. Like it looks like play to everybody else, right? I mean, one of the weird things about music and just generally in the arts is it's like, oh, you're still doing that? You hear that a lot when
you got your little band on the go.
Are you making some money doing that?
Yeah.
There's a lot of that. Are you making any money? It sort of becomes, because it doesn't, they don't, and even if you are, they're like, then it becomes like, you got the best job in the world, and it's like a job, right? It kind of becomes this, and it's like, I guess so, like, yeah, I mean, I love the fact that I can do this, and I wouldn't be able to do it with the depth that I'm doing it at if I didn't make money doing it. Like if I couldn't make a living, if I had to put my time elsewhere. So like, yeah, I mean, I'm hugely fortunate in that regard, and I'm glad that it's my job. But it is funny that we just, that definition is sort of there. It's just baked into our whole upbringing, and our whole sense of self has a lot to do with how we make money. One of the Um, there was a woman, Madeline Bunting, met her at a festival. She's a great writer. And she was given a talk about care work. Again, it's like shadow work, right? You know, the care workers and things like that. And rather than asking somebody, what do you do? You know, which is what most people do, which often sort of says, which kind of implies, what do you do for a living? Or it can feel that way for somebody who's not working or is like, you know, but she asked the question, who do you care for? Or what do you care for? You know, which I thought that's a really nice way to frame it.
Yeah.
I don't always do that. I sometimes say, what do you do? You know, like I'm still programmed that way, right? But I like the question, who do you care for? What do you care for? You know, because everyone's caring for someone or something in their lives.
Even psychologically to ourselves to say, I'm going to work when it's something that we enjoy doing, I think can probably impact how we feel about it. And I sometimes wonder, like, well, what are you so anxious to do after you're done working?
When you're done
that
working,
is different than the work.
There's also something that can be beneficial of going, I'm going to work, I'm coming here. Like to come to a space like this, it puts me in the frame that I'm going to make music. So like, there's also something, the language is there for a reason, and it's not like but it's just, I guess it becomes, and you know, there's the classic sort of retirement story of the man or woman who works till they're 65 and then they retire. And it's like, what do I do? And I think a lot of men struggle with that. And not to say that women don't too, you know, but maybe, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm thinking out loud, so don't hold me to it, but you know, maybe it's a generational thing with older men now, where you had, you know, because lots of women are out in the workplace now. And so that feeling may change now. But when you had, when there were more like sort of defined roles at a certain time and men were out working all the time, and then that stops, like that feeling would be different, you know, than it might be. And so there might be an asymmetry there that may sort of disappear. I mean, you know, one of the challenges is just like, now it sort of feels like, it's like everything is work. You know, it's like everything's being kind of sucked up by capitalism, and sort of it's like, hey, everybody can, you know, in an effort to make everything, let's make sure everyone's included in all the work and at making money. You know, like what you want to do is find some way to make it so that like everyone has equal opportunity, and you have, and people aren't hemmed in by needing to like make, you know, like what it takes to make ends meet now for people is so much, you know, and you want people to have, you know, in families where both parents have to be working all the time, that's an intense, that has a shadow, you know, so it would be great if we had some other way in which we could find a society that allowed men and women free time. You know,
universal basic income.
Yeah, maybe universal basic income. I have no idea what the answer is there. I mean, I'm just, you know, I'm kind of just thinking out loud a little bit, but I do think part of it is language frames the possibilities. And so if we don't start thinking a little bit about what the words mean to us and why we're using them, then we often don't even see the possibility there might be a different way to do it. And so it becomes a little bit about going, yeah, all right, if I'm using the word work, in what context? Because it means different things to different people, you know, just like like words all have, that's what's interesting about them, but you're trying to find that like common ground, you know?
This feels like a good segue to ask you about how you might interpret or answer the question of if you feel like you have made it.
Yeah, I mean, I like one of my reoccurring jokes on stage, if I'm playing a place I've never played before in some of the real small, like say small towns in Ontario or something, I'll be like, you know, Ma, I made it. I'm playing Picton, you know, like, but yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, yeah, I made it. Like I'm playing Picton, Ontario. Like I never played there before, you know? So yeah, I do. Absolutely. I mean, but I don't know what making it where, like it's kind of like there's always a sort of journey, and there's the idea that it's going to kind of change. But I mean, I'm making it. That might be a better way to put it, right? Like it's if you've made it, what's there left to do? But it's like I'm making it, and you are, and we're all kind of making it on some level because we're sort of all making it up as we go along, right? We're doing something, right? You're all in the moment. You know, it just becomes, there are those moments. I do have moments in here because I love this studio. I love the work. I like the fact that it's serving the community, and there's been people recording here and lots of records being made, and all of it. So I'm happy that the space exists, and I feel like a degree of like satisfaction. I don't love using the word pride because it's got a shadow too. But I feel really happy and joyous that I could work in and on a space and in the space, and then have it sort of allow me to do things that I wouldn't have been able to do before, and get and make connections with other people and other musicians, and having other. So yeah, I feel like in that way, really, 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 really fortunate. Because it's not been easy, and I've been working hard for it, but I also recognize it has a lot to do with time, place, good luck, and and the fact that whatever it is, like I can sense when I'm making a connection. And I love that. Like it's really it kind of I'm not saying it completes me, but I'm sort of addicted to the feeling. I think a lot of people in music and art are, you're looking for connection, right? And you find a way to do it. But so I feel really happy that I have that with a lot of people, and they come to the shows, right? And so that connection means that so I get out on the road, and it's good, and the shows are rocking, and everyone has a good time, and I can come back again, and I see a lot of the same people back. I don't feel like it's just completely going to evaporate. Like there was a point where I went, oh wait, maybe I can take a month off, or I can take 6, but for so long it was like, I felt like every decision was crucial and that I didn't want to lose any momentum. And now I feel like, and I do feel like the business is getting harder. I see it everywhere. I see it here. My manager, Sherry, and I talk about it, I'm sure because the bottom's fallen out of the ways in which the money could come in, and people, and the tighter the world gets economically,
people have less
money, right? So you can't, and the tickets are getting expensive, and people need more money to go out on the road, all of it. So not saying it's all going to like hold. I feel like the bottom. My joke was like the music business was used to be a wooden box, and then Napster came along and it was a cardboard box, and then streaming came along and it's like, and it's a cardboard box in the rain, like it's like the bottom is falling out. It's just like, but my gig's been, so much of it's live. And then I feel like part of what brings people is the fact that they like a live connection. I try to just make it up. I try to just keep doing it differently live, sort of keep bringing the same thing and do it differently. We had Thrush Sherman had this, Rob wrote it. Rob's so good with language. He's so funny. Good writer. God, he's a good writer. But I think he'd written it, but it was like a poster. I think it was like when our debut album came out, Sweet Home Wrecker. It took a long time for it to come out. I think the poster that we made and put around town, or maybe it was the promo for the show we were going to do, but it's like, Halifax's bastard sons do it again for the first time. Thrush Sherman Sweet Home Wrecker is out, something like that. And I was like, Rob had written that. I still remember it. It cracks me up. But yeah, it's like, I feel like I'm doing it again for the first time, like that's what I want my shows to feel like, I'm back,
So you just had your 50th birthday. We won't keep you too long here, Joel. We know you've been recording all day. You're just a guy who doesn't stop, and it's inspiring to see just watching you do what you do over these last 25 years of your career.
Thank you both.
But yeah, you turned 50. You're still going at this as hard as ever. What keeps you inspired? What keeps you motivated to just keep doing this?
My wife Rebecca is incredibly creative, visual artist, and but at other things too. I mean, she's sews amazing clothes. Everything she does is sort of like artistic. But as soon as you put money into the equation, like, hey, can I buy this off you? I mean, she sold a few pieces of art over the years and this and that. But as soon as some people are like, I'm wondering if I could commission you to do something. And she's like, I can't do that. Like she sort of is just compelled to do it entirely for self-expression and for essentially like mental health to some, like it is, like a way of just completing some, or being able to articulate the things that you don't put into language. So she does that with visuals in this remarkable way. She's done the art on a number of my records.
Yeah.
But as far as like a barometer for what creative impulse looks like at its most authentic and instinctual, intuitive is a better word. But also unpolluted by trying to monetize it or trying to sort of, and there's, I like, music is one of those things where it goes out in the world, part of it, the trick. So, I'm okay to, try to marry the commerce to it now and then. That's why I have a manager and, kind of all those things. So I take that as part of it. And not everybody, but I'm very inspired by her artwork and her integrity as a person when it comes to just like what self-expression is. And I sort of see that as the kind of ground zero of, and so it's not just her. There's other people who other writers, lots of musicians in the community who maybe don't have the recognition that they could. So I'm inspired by all sorts of people all the time, but just in my close inner circle, my wife Rebecca and my son Shannon, who's taken after her in many respects with the way he's into drawing and art. Like he's very much about not wanting to pander, and that can be a hard place. I mean, a lot of the time, if you want to make art on those terms, you have to have another job, right? That allows that. Because, if you want to be a full-time artist, you got to find a way to sell it and all those things. We're living on a planet that costs money, but I do love just art for art's sake and just pure self-expression is, and that's what's awesome about like the guy at the camp who has a guitar and goes, I got a song. And, and you're kind of like, it's okay. You're thinking in the back, if your critical hat goes on, you go, it's, but if you just leave your critical thinking, I could write that better, mind or whatever. You're like, I know I couldn't because he's written this song for himself. It's awesome. It's so, perfect. Perfect. Great. Right. It's a beautiful thing. So it's not, I remind myself of that when I'm maybe like thinking intellectually about music or being kind of too critical of something. It's like, man, if anyone's doing anything that they feel really close to, like I would sooner have that than someone just polishing something because they want to make money. And it could be the best song ever, but they're doing it just because they want to cash in. You know what I mean? Like the motive of a really ramshackle, not so great tune coming straight from the heart,
that's the beautiful stuff.
That's the beautiful stuff. I prefer that over something that sounds all right, that's right, and is even maybe kind of hitting all the bells, but for some reason rings hollow. Of course, who knows, right? Like I think most people, most people I think are doing it out of love, but the money can get the pursuit can get in the way.
Yeah, not
just the money, the pursuit. Sorry, you're gonna have to cut out a couple of those burps. Right
no,
there. Edit that.
They
one
sound
out.
Great.
Edit that one out.
We'll sample them.
I just have one last question, and it's kind of maybe clearing something up or confirming something. So I'm from Inverness. Yeah. I know you have a connection to Inverness.
Oh yeah, Timmy Brennan, who played bass in the Emergency early on.
Yeah,
was Inverness. Yeah,
and I heard, and it's probably 95% chance it's not true because just an Inverness story and small town stories float around.
Folklore.
Most of them aren't true, but I heard that the Emergency was formed in Inverness at a New Year's party.
Well, pretty much. Like you're pretty much.
Inverness just celebrated, didn't they?
Essentially, Al Tuck and Katrina Sturton and I drove up to Inverness for the Millennium New Year. So Y2K,
Yeah.
And to go to Timmy Brennan's family place, Lorraine's.
To watch the world end. Right?
Watch the world end with the Brennans. No better place than with Lorraine Brennan.
Yeah.
Saying it's over, boys. Went up there. Tim Brennan took pictures of the Hermit back in 1994. And Timmy was just like super cool. And Dave Marsh, who I met through Chris Murphy. Dave's 12 years older than me, who plays drums in the Emergency. Dave started playing with me. The Emergency, there was a 5-piece version of the Emergency Band called the Joel Plaskett Emergency Band. Yeah. That was
not the Joel Plaskett Energy Band.
No, so that's part of the that's an Inverness story right there.
Yeah. I remember.
Yeah. So the Emergency as a name existed before that. In '98, we started doing shows in this 5-piece to support and need medical attention.
Okay.
When it came out in '99, but when I decided that I wanted to do another record, and I'd been playing a bunch with Dave in the 5-piece, but I'd seen Dave and Timmy as a rhythm section in Blackpool back in the day. A great rhythm section together. Tim's a great bass player. Mm-hmm. And I've always really kind of like looked up to both to Dave and Tim, but Tim had just come back to town. And so we went up there and I said, hey, when you move back to town, like he was coming back to Halifax, I was like, we should get together and jam, like, well, you want to come play with Dave and I basically, because Dave liked playing with Tim. And so we started playing in the top floor of the Khyber building, right?
Oh, nice.
And that's when we started work. I mean, I'd written a bunch of the tunes that ended up on Down to the Khyber. Some of them were old Hermit leftovers, but we started working it up there, and those guys brought all this great energy to it, and we worked on that record with Ian McGettigan, who had been in Threshold with me. So the Emergency was like, that was New Year's Eve. I'd asked Timmy to come down, and we kind of like 2 months, not even a month later or whatever, we were jamming in the Khyber building, and we're making that record through that year. It was so, and then it was the Inverness Oran, right? The paper
Inverness Oran,
I should say, it said, local boy Timmy Brandon's playing in Halifax with the Joel Plaskett Energy Band. I was like, it's a better name. Like, it's a better name. It's better.
That would be the cover band.
Oh my God. Why didn't I just go with that? It's so good. It's great. Well, yeah, it's when if we say a secret bill, if you see the Joel Plaskett Energy Band playing, I might be there.
Yeah, I know the guy who wrote it, but I won't out him here. So anyway, Bill Dunphy. Yeah. You nailed it, buddy.
I love it.
Oh wow. This is our first time getting to spend time together, Joel. It's just been like beyond what I ever could have imagined. I know like we could talk forever about your music history, and we of course talked some about that, but it's been really nice just getting to know you.
Thank you. Yeah, you too. Yeah.
There's more to, I think, the artists that we certainly cherish and admire and enjoy what they create, but getting to know a little bit more about your soul has been really special today.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a great interview. Thanks for taking the time. And yeah, there's something about when you connect the dots between people. I always love when I'm working on music with someone and then you get to know them a bit. Their music gets richer for me, Yeah. So yeah, thanks so much.
100%.
Appreciate it so much, Joel. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Make It with Mike and Kristen is recorded and produced by Michael S. Ryan at Hot Jupiter Sounds.
Intro and outro music by me as well.
Cover art by Emily Rankin at Take Note Graphic Design, and photography by Candace Moore.
If you cool cats want to help us out, the best way to spread the word is by telling a friend about us. Tell your mom, tell all your buds. Word of mouth is still the best way to reach people. It's free for you and helps us immensely. And if you're into it, you can like and subscribe and all that stuff too.
Another way to support us is through our Patreon. We have a number of super fun tiers and perks like bonus content, handwritten postcards, creative coaching, and so much more. Find us at patreon.com/Mike and Kristen.
For the makers, the dreamers, and the figuring it outers, have fun trying to make it out there, friends.